So this is my reflection on the myth of the culture of poverty, as well as just the chapter and high expectations for students. I really liked this article. I just think it really made me think about a lot of things in the way that I do things, and realize that I'm not doing everything perfectly, of course. But it's always a good reminder just to self-check, to read articles like this and kind of realize that what you're doing is not great, and there's ways to change that. Look at the positives. So, one thing that I really took out of it, I guess, is just, I think I'm that teacher. I think that especially last semester, working at George McGovern, I remember coming home and being like, I love these kids. They're awesome. I really, really, really like spending time with them, and then there'd be like this floodgate of all these things related to poverty, from, their parents aren't working, or the parents don't care about education, or student can't even change clothes in a week, so how are they going to be able to do their homework? Stuff like that I would start getting going in my brain, and it just starts to overwhelm you, and then it definitely affects how I view kids, and my expectations for them. Definitely would lower them, and I know that's wrong, and reading this article just reminded me of that. I guess, as far as ways that it relates to the chapter that we read, I think that just having high expectations for every child, not just those who are from high-income families, but realizing that even those kids who come from poverty are also capable of the same things, and translating that over to how I treat them on a daily basis. I liked the article talked a little bit about the deficit theory, being one of the most harmful things in a classroom, and I think that's so true. If we're looking at weaknesses and we're identifying kids by their weaknesses first, that's just really dangerous. And it can be really easy to get down on kids and their expectations, or our expectations for them. And it can also just be really easy for me to get down on my teaching abilities, and just get down on the whole teaching profession, which is never good. I guess it's interesting now where I'm at with Sioux Falls Christian. Most of my kids, if not all, I would say, are from wealthier families. They aren't living in poverty. But I find myself still having different expectations for kids. And not necessarily based on poverty, but based on behavior, and based on the effort that they give. And then there's just a lot more parent involvement at Sioux Falls Christian than what I'm used to. And I've seen that those parents that aren't involved, I tend to judge. I tend to think about, I have a little guy in my class who is late for school basically every day, who skips school, who sometimes, I've been there, in the couple months I've been here, been at Sioux Falls Christian, he's gone on probably 4 to 5 different vacations, for like weeks at a time, where he'll just miss the whole week. His parents don't really give us any notice. One time they called us on a Thursday afternoon and said that Noah was going to be gone for the next 2 weeks, which is just kind of crazy, and just kind of expected us to throw together all his homework, and I don't know if they expected it. I don't really know what they wanted, but they didn't have a problem with it, and it didn't seem like an issue that he'd be missing 2 weeks of school. And I definitely see myself looking at this guy and this student in particular and saying, I have lower expectations for you because your parents have lower expectations of you at this age, because your parents don't seem to value education. And I know that's wrong, and so that's something that I would love to change going forward. I think another big thing that I see both from what we learned in the slides in the chapter and then also in the article is the idea of self-reflection, observation, of growth and education for teachers. I think for me, I want to keep educating myself about this. I want to dispel those thoughts and those myths in my head, in my own head, about the culture of poverty. I think just continuing to read articles, continuing to just self-check myself, and maybe even have other teachers observe what they see in my interactions towards students. I actually had my teacher do this last week. After kind of reading this article and thinking about it, I was like, I wonder if I'm calling on all my students during a lesson. And I had my teacher just kind of sit in the back and mark it down. And interestingly enough, I did call on all my students, but she brought up to me afterwards that a lot of my questions that were very difficult, a higher thinking level, those kind of things, I would turn to my high achievers immediately, and not really give any of my low achievers a shot at it even. And so I would call on everybody, but I was calling on my low achievers for the easy, recall questions that I knew that they would know. But overall, I wasn't giving them a shot, even if they raised their hand or expressed interest at answering one of the more difficult, higher-level thinking questions. So that's something that I do want to get better at going forward. Thanks for listening.